Now, hey. Hi. Hello. Good morning. It's that time in the morning. 5:37. I'm awake. I want to read through today, or at least skim through, The Ground itself. The Ground itself is a tabletop role-playing game. It's a one-shot dealio, wherein the players create a place together, and then they take that place through time, whether that history is over the course of a few days, a few years, decades, centuries, millennia. Ultimately, it's up to the cards in play, and the roll of a dice, and the flip of a coin, and the creative machinations of the players around the table to tell this story. I think that's really cool. They kind of put all of the possible creative tools you could in here, short of like tarot, but yeah. Obviously, I love history, I love world building, I love stuff like that. I get a huge kick out of that. Sense of exploration in games is really important to me, so the idea of finding a way to facilitate sharing that part of the creative experience and that part of a tabletop experience with more people is hugely appealing. And for a lot of reasons, when you sit down at a table with a group of people to play a game, whether it be Dungeons and Dragons, Stars Without Number, Cyberpunk, whatever the fuck, the setting is something that is oftentimes not immutable, but it's pretty set in stone. The players don't get a lot of agency in the broad strokes of defining the setting, let's say. Now, a good group, good GM, a good session involves players and their characters changing the world, or filling in the blanks, or making the world their own, right? But generally, there's this sense that there's this pre-packaged thing. And especially if we talk about very old school D&D, that the expectation was a dungeon master would know anything and everything under the sun about... No, and I'm gonna kill Plane 9 here. I'm finding it wildly distracting. You know what? The one at the top of the screen can stay. Gygaxian GMing is generally this idea that the dungeon master, game master, whatever fuck derivative you want to talk about, knows everything about the world and is everyone and everything in the world and is essentially God. And yeah, we don't need to talk about the myriad weird things that Gary did or thought or believed in, from the very openly misogynistic things he said to kind of just his own personal flaws. And God, I haven't even delved into his attitudes towards race. I'm sure there's probably some real Monka stuff in there. Again, yeah, I'm not really interested. Gygax helped popularize a growing genre, and I'm quite grateful for that. But his guidelines about what a dungeon master should be were toxic. Deeply, deeply toxic. And a lot of the attitudes that he... Oh, it's drying. The attitudes that he set in stone that would be perpetuated throughout gamer culture. Oh my god, they're just fucking insufferable. Just, yeah. Anywho, I like this. I like its gumption. I like what it says that it's about. I want to read the rules and see if it's about what it says what it's about. Gotta say, the art does a lot for me here. It's very simplistic, but it's quite good. And you can't see this because I'm in the way. There. You know what? No. Yep. No. Layer. What layer do you want, Alex? Just all of them. Do I want to... No. Perfect. I'm like, do I want to move me to the side? Fuck no, I don't want to do that. That'll work for me. I don't want to move my camera, because then I'll have to move it back. The Ground itself, a tabletop world-building game about places over time. Everest Pipkin. Table of contents. This is a game about places over time. Think about places that have been important to you. Your childhood fort under a rose bush. Your first apartment, the one with the view. The town where your grandmother spent her last few years. Don't really know what town that is. My grandmothers are both still alive, thank you, so... That's yet to be seen. Or think about the places that have been, or will be, important to others. A city-state in revolt, an ant colony, a generation ship 400 centuries into its voyage across towards another star. Although there may be times during the game when we're compelled to widen or narrow our focus, this is not possible for us. The story we're building is about this place, this field, this star, this city, this tree, this crossroads. No matter how we feel about our characters, if they leave our frame, we may not follow. Our camera is anchored to our place. It may not pivot or stray. Remember that places have memory. That what has happened here is always, in some small or big way, written into the walls, the stones, or the future of the people who continue to live there. Fundamentally, this is a game about the echoes and traces that we leave for others after we're gone. This requires 2 to 5 players. I'm going to try playing with 6. If I see a reason in here why that really won't work, I'm just going to sit out and facilitate my group of 5. I think is the best way to do that, and that I have 6 people just in case somebody falls through, or if nobody does, then I can sit out. But I think we can hack this and make 6 work. Deck of cards, a 6-sided die, a coin, a piece of paper, a writing implement, and a few hours. Pass the book around the table so everyone may flip through and become familiar with where the sections are. Establish whether you'll read aloud in turns, or whether one person will take the role of facilitator during setup. I'm probably gonna just facilitate. I'd like to read aloud in turns, but I'm assuming I'm just gonna record this, send it to the group I'm playing with. I've already sent them the PDF. They're either going to read it ahead of time or listen to this, or both, or we'll go over briefly before time, but time is valuable, man, and we can't... This isn't that long, but still anything to expedite it would help. Regardless, these rules should be read aloud to the group. Clear the tabletop of extra clutter and gather a deck of cards, a 6-sided die, a coin, a piece of paper, and a pen or pencil. We're using Roll20, so it's all cooked in there. Separate the cards into 2 stacks. One of faces, jacks, queens, kings, and one of numbers, aces and 10s. Oh, aces through 10s. Remove the jokers, shuffle each stack, and place them face down on the table. The face card stack will be used during gameplay, and the number cards will be used during main gameplay. During game setup, and number cards will be used during main gameplay. Okay, put the die on the table. It will be used to establish our timeline. Touch the sheet of paper. I like this. Verb, 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 verb. Not verb, not verb. But the way that they're doing this is giving you actions, things to do, not you'll need this and this and this. They kind of did that, but I don't know, it's kind of cute the way they're doing this. I don't know if it's intentional. I imagine that it is. Touch the sheet of paper. This paper will be used to take very brief notes about names, places, and other story developments. We'll probably just record it. People are free to take notes if they want. I think the idea is the notes are shared. You may elect a scribe or to all take turns writing notes. Optionally, you may decide to skip taking notes entirely, merely relying on collective memory to tell the story. I like all of these. I like all of these approaches because they're all ways that history is written and kept, right? Some histories are just kept through the people who lived through them, the people who experienced them, and they don't pass it down. It lives on in memory and sentiment and feeling, and it just kind of fades away. Other things are recorded intentionally by groups of people who try and add in different perspectives and angles to make it as accurate a representation of what happened, as fair representation of what happened. And, you know, that's increasingly popular as far as recorded history goes. But often, that original electing a single scribe to take notes. Yeah, Herodotus. Having singular storytellers and writers and authors who pass down what was true versus what was untrue, especially in the Western tradition. We really like our monolithic tomes and our monolithic canon. Anyway, yeah, neat way to put that in a microcosm. Or boil that down to its most basic element, I guess. Place a coin on the table. Heads up. This is a consent mechanic. Some stories are hard to tell, and some games are scary to play. If the coin is flipped to tails at any point by any player, the game must immediately pause. It may not be resumed until everyone takes a break. Oh, cool, and discusses the reason for the pause, and any possible adjustments to the story that need to be made. Only after collectively deciding whether to end or to continue, may the coin be flipped back, and may the game resume. Now, in Roll20, we could add in coins, but they're not as easy to flip over as reaching out and flipping, so I may do that, or I may just use a safe word, for a lack of a better term, an X card, basically. Just have people type X in chat, or stop in chat, and then we'll do the same thing. If you're playing online or at a distance, interested in additional material, you may wish to skim the optional mechanics section at the back of the book before starting play. Begin! Oh wow, that's okay. Our setting. The setting for our game should be decided collaboratively around the table. This may be emergent. For example, one player suggests a place that involves animals, another player may amend this suggestion to mean a zoo, a third player may agree but suggest making it a zoo planet, established as a biodiversity reserve in the far future. You may feel out multiple options, but try not to say no to other suggestions. Rather, build on top of existing ideas or ask clarifying questions to create a place that's everyone. Yeah, yes and not no. And if you have to know, do a no but. Remember that everything we see happen over the course of our game occurs in the single location. We cannot move outside of our established frame or see any actions or events elsewhere. Be prepared to spend time in the place that you choose. This place doesn't need to be thoroughly mapped out. For now, the barest description that may be summed up in a few sentences will suffice. We'll discover it together during play. Decide this now. The process should go around the table, take no more than a few minutes. Everyone should contribute. Our timeline. This game is played in 4 cycles. Each cycle is separated by a gap in time. One player rolls a 6-sided die and records a result. The die will determine the unit of time that this gap is measured in, and this metric stays on for the remainder of the game. 1 means days, which might lend itself to an intimate and close-textured story. A 6 means millennia. You're playing a game over thousands of years, and what was here may not survive these jumps in a recognizable way. So on a 1, this is a story taking days. On a 2, this is a story taking weeks. And a 3, this is a story taking years. And a 4, decades. 5, centuries. 6, millennia. I am fascinated by these. Particularly centuries and millennia. I mean, obviously, you've seen my backgrounds. I love maps, I love history, so being able to explore that would be very cool. But there's something very interesting about the possibility of an intimate and close textured story, particularly with how antithetical that is to a lot of traditional tabletop role-playing. Like D&D is what I'm thinking of. You don't sit in one place for days playing through the minutia of the day and the feelings of the people in the place. You kind of swoop in, kill people, maybe stay the night, go off on another quest. Like it's real hit and run kind of game. So we'll see. I have some preconceived ideas and notions about these and even years, but once we get into weeks and days, randomization mechanics like this are great, because even if you walk into something like this with some ideas, they help to make you improvise. The unit of time will affect the way the story is being told. If you roll days, your action should be quick-paced, happening in a now that may see a few hours pass. If you rolled centuries or millennia, your now may be years or even decades. If the collective group feels that a given timeline is antagonistic to the story that you'd like to tell, you may re-roll. However, try to think broadly. A story that was about a high school may instead be about the fields that were there before, the place abandoned in the future, and the stones underneath it all. Conversely, a story that was at first glance about the movements of empire may narrow, instead focusing on one late summer week in a golden city that knows things are changing soon. You'll begin by playing in a period of time you establish during setup. You'll not move around in time until the first gap, detailed later. Establishing our place. Each player is dealt cards from the face card stack in a circle until no cards are left. Then, going in the same circle, each player sets down one card at a time and answers the question associated with that card, detailed below. They may read the question first, or pick between their cards at random. I kind of like the randomness, but letting people read the questions first gives them more autonomy in what kind of story they're telling. Like force improvisation or like a little bit of controlled chaos here. I'll have to ask how people feel about this. Is I don't know how I feel about this. In fact, I'm gonna skip over the questions when we get to that section, because I don't really want to know. Keep going until the world feels established, or each player is out of cards, whichever happens first. Try to keep this discussion under 25 minutes. Keep your answers to each question very short. You may wish to make brief notes to jog your memory later. Skip, don't read that. Main gameplay. During our 4 cycles of gameplay, players draw cards from the numerical pile. Each type of card is associated with a set of questions, which are answered in order. For example, the first time a player draws an ace of any suit, they'd answer the first question listed under the aces, which is, what are the plants like in our place? The rocks, the soil. The second time an ace is drawn, the player would answer the second question. It's time to plant the seedlings. What are the seedlings and where are they planted? What is the harvest that's hoped for? And so forth. Read the question out loud, narrate your answer to the group, and then discard the card in a discard pile, optionally making a note of which card it was. The group may ask follow-up or clarifying questions, but may not contradict what you have expressly said. The player may also discard the card before addressing the question, and enter a focus situation, choosing to tell a story, throw a party, discover something, see an omen, leave the frame, or move on and skip the turn. These focus situations allow us to skip certain questions, instead spending more time on a single moment. Okay, so you draw a card, either answer its question, or say, I don't want to do that, I want to tell a story. I want to throw a party. I want to discover something. I want to see an omen. I want to leave the frame, or I just want to move on. Okay, fair enough. Choosing to enter it is. Specific rules of the situations are detailed in a later section. Okay. If you draw a 10, the cycle ends, moving us forward in time. After every cycle, when a player draws a 10 of any suit, time advances. The player rolls a 6-sided die, and this number, plus the unit of time decided at the beginning of the game, is the length of our gap. For example, if the die lands on a 3, and the unit decided at the top was days, 3 days pass. If the die reveals a 5, and the unit was centuries, you have a gap of 500 years. You may choose to go forward or backward in time. That's fucking cool. Being able to go, you know, let's say we start out at a place and then jump forward, I don't know, 600 years. And then the next time, I guess this is up to the player, right? There's something that happened in that interim period that they want to explore more, so they jump back rather than forward. That's very cool. Or they just want to move on, they jump forward. Okay. This may narratively be used to take a break. After rolling the die, talk about something else. Grab a snack from the kitchen, walk outside, feed the cat. This is probably a tiny gap compared to the one described in our story, but consider allowing some moments to pass, and for the actions of the last cycle to fade just slightly into history. When the table reconvenes, you could even do this weekly. If you really want to draw this out, you could have a cycle last a week, or a whole session. They'd be very short sessions, but especially if your group only has a little bit of time, you can just go through a session. I really like that, especially for that some of the last cycle to fade into memory or history. When the table reconvenes, you'll collectively answer the following questions, optionally taking notes. Players may each answer one question in a circle, or all chime in on each one. Remember, try not to contradict other players' assertions, but rather work your own ideas into the fabric of what they've said. Do our characters or civilization still live here? If not, who lives here now? Does anyone? What does a place physically look like now? Has anything visually changed? How does it smell? How does it feel here? Does a place still use the same name? And if not, what is it called now? And who calls it that? After answering these questions, resume the normal pattern of gameplay. Okay, so only 3 of them. Fair enough. I think I am gonna try not to answer these, or we'll just go the next 3 people in order. I'm actively thinking about, I have some very active creative voices in the games that I play. Obviously, I'm one of them. Corey particularly is quite enthusiastic in a great way, but is a moderator or a host for these types of things. I try to make sure the microphone, the metaphorical microphone, or literal microphone, I suppose, is shared, goes around the table, and we share the spotlight as equally as possible, or at least give everyone the opportunity to have their moment with the mic or moment in the sun. So trying to lean into mechanics that force the next person to talk rather than leaving it up to whoever wants to talk, it has an appeal to me. It mechanically enforcing shared authority. Ending the game. When the 4th 10 card is drawn, the game is over, no matter the number of cards left in the pile or the stories that are in motion. Our window is fogged, the clarity of vision we had into our place is lost to us. It may feel sudden, but in truth, there's never a clean exit. Places go on forever, building narrative by their mere existence. However, just because we cannot know for certain what takes place after the window of our game does not mean that we cannot make some conjecture. After all, this is a game about long traces over time. Watching our place with such attention, maybe we've learned to predict what would come to pass. As a group, without cards, decide the following. What happens tomorrow in our place? Who wakes up? Does anyone? What do they see? What's the feeling that they get from the world? And a summary of play, okay. Focus, situations, and card meanings. You may discard your card and pursue one of these actions during your turn, unless you draw 10. You can tell a story. The player adopts or invents a storytelling character in-game, briefly describing them, their name, what they sound like. This can be an old bard, an entertainer on TV, a parent with a bedtime book, or something more abstract like a bird cawing in the morning. Other players may enter the scene as listeners who may choose to interrupt to ask questions. This is cute. Roleplay or narrate telling the story. The story that's told is known as a fiction or a legend, not an actual course of in-game events. However, the stories we tell about our world are just as important as the things that happen in it. You could throw a party. The player describes the situation of the party. Is it a birthday? A ball? A festival in the street this spring when flowers are all in bloom? And every player picks or invents a character or a thing that it intends. Roleplay or narrate as these characters chatting idly, dancing, having cake, or merely existing in splendor. Topics of the larger story or situation may come up in these conversations, but do not act on big things in any tangible way at the party. They're just a topic of gossip for a very good day. You could discover something. This is a chance to name a fact that enters the world whole cloth. Maybe a teenager unearths some strange old artifact, or a chemist synthesizes a new periodic element, or a water main breaks in the street. Do not add details to past events. This is a discovery that's happening right now. Hard to do an old artifact without talking about the past, but sure, alright. Narrate what is discovered and why it's important. I really like that one. Throw a party seems like, I don't know, it's cute, but I guess it makes it feel more lived in. But it feels very much like an improv prompt, and I'm like, yeah, tell a story is already a little improv-y for me, but I really like the notion of the stories we tell about places are maybe as important as the things that actually happen to the place. You know, myth and legend are really important. That's super cool. Throw a party? Yeah, I kinda... The goal here, ostensibly, is to create a setting that then we're gonna use as our basis for role-playing in. I don't know what rule set we're gonna use. That'll come after we make the setting and everything falls into place. So... that itch will get scratched further down the line, just not right now. Right, so I don't think I'm ever gonna pick party. If somebody else does, you know, great. If that's the fun they want to have, if that's the story they want to tell, that is the story they're gonna tell and we're gonna tell together. But personally, it's not speaking to me. See an omen. Here, the player may gesture at a future possibility. An omen may be the classic type. A comet or a spell gone awry, something that points at the materiality of the world. A hungry animal in a form from a famine in the countryside, or an heir to the throne that sickens ahead of a coup. This is a chance to set things in motion. The player narrates what is seen, by who, and how it's perceived by those that hear the news. So this is a really cool prompt for, like, the 4th era, right? This is something I'd be super interested in doing towards the end of the game. And kind of setting the stakes. And getting... Or anytime it enters a lull or things get too comfortable, throwing in omens or making a discovery seem like really interesting places to create sources of tension, sources of friction, sources of inspiration or movement, right? Dynamism. Yeah. Leave the frame. Just for a second, the window widens, and we're able to see a little bit more of our world. You may ask, what's the mountain like to the north of our old house? Are there massing armies on the seas? What types of dogs do the neighbors have? Or anything else that you wish to know. You get one question, and the table collectively answers, and the world snaps back. Okay. Move on. Player skips his turn, merely discarding the card and letting the action rest elsewhere. Fair enough. I don't care to know what the cards are. I think this is better if it comes out in play. So I can't think of things in advance. I'd rather react. Notes about style of play. If you find yourself struggling to establish a place that feels real, ask and answer questions about what the place looks, smells, sounds, and feels like. Create and investigate daily patterns. The office manager who always gets coffee at 11:35 a.m. Or the academy that lets students out at the 4 p.m. bell. Talk about markers, monuments, statues. Decide on colloquial names for fishing spots, romantic overlooks. And make the story that gained it such a moniker. Remember, every place is densely lived. That's an interesting way to put it. As you play, difficult situations will arise. Conflict will flame, lives will be cut short. But our place will likely endure. It's up to the table to willfully expose our place to such difficulty. Knowing that it's through challenge that we reveal the mettle of where we are. Remember, we're not focused on individual people, but rather the walls that they live in, the paths that they walk on, the statues and illegal regulations and mythologies that they erect which outlast them. Try to avoid embodying a single character repeatedly or becoming so invested in a single life that you find yourself trying to win for them. Instead, we must watch from the frame that we've established. Not impartially, but with the knowledge that every place sees much and cannot hold on to one person forever. There's no game master in this game, but one player may take on the role of the facilitator. This is someone who's played before or is familiar with the rule set. Facilitator does not have any additional storytelling power over the other players, but may choose to gently remind of the goals of the game if the table becomes myopic or sidetracked. That's probably me. I would prefer not to, but yeah. I sent out the invitations, I came up with the game, I'm taking some ownership of the organization and structure of this, I'm scheduling it, so I am facilitating it a little bit. But so's everybody else in their participation, in their communication, in their etc, etc. Ideally, this is a non-issue and won't come up. As always, the health of players is more important than the game. Always warn other players first if you want to take the story to a place that might be difficult. Listen carefully to any concerns. If at any point the story is too hard to hear for anyone, pause the game, take a break, jump forward to a different scene, change the course of events, or stop playing. Special cases. Poetic interpretation. Some of the cards will mention things like the street, the church, the crowds, but these may not be applicable to the world that you choose. But they likely have an emotional equivalent. A town square may be a kitchen table. A parade may be on television. Please take liberties with these and with any card. Non-human timelines. If you're playing a story with non-human characters, please feel free to adapt these metrics to their lifetimes if it feels more appropriate. A day in the city of bugs may mean something quite different from a day in online space. However, if in doubt, err on the side of human timelines, as we can implicitly understand these metrics of scope. Context. Context matters. Context matters in communicating clearly and coherently and effectively. And oh my god, yes. I don't shut up about this shit. Places with no inhabitants. It's possible that you choose a place that's not peopled, or loses its population over time. You may choose to skip cards that ask about who lives here, or apply them abstractly to the landscape, plants, and other non-sentient aspects of the world. Real history. You may tell a story about actual historical events, or, because of the way that our timeline works, you might end up in real history. Do not feel obligated to reproduce what actually occurred in the world. Remember, this is a story. Tarot decks. Yeah, I was wondering if this would come in. Players may optionally choose to use a tarot deck instead of a deck of playing cards. If this is the case, major arcana should be removed, as will the page cards, which will have no equivalent in a playing card deck. In the tarot, wands are equivalent to clubs, cups correlate to hearts, pentacles are diamonds, and swords correspond to spades. I'm probably gonna do this. It's an aesthetic shift. Like, that's literally it, but I have to come up with a deck for Roll20 anyway. I might as well get a deck that looks cool. And tarot just feels more gamey. It feels, you know, it has that kind of mystical vibe to it. Magic. So yeah, I think I will incorporate a tarot deck. Variable time spans. You may elect to skip establishing your timeline at the top of the game, and instead roll 2 6-sided die during each gap. The first die will correspond to the unit of measurement, while the second refers to how many of these units have passed. I like this a lot more. For the reasons I talked about earlier, and I like that it's randomized at all. I really like doubling down on that randomization, so you don't know if this player, this character you're describing, this king, this roommate, this duck, will be around the next time a 10 is picked up. You know, if it's a story about I kind of like this because we don't really have control over time, and we can kind of budget with it, and we can do our best to cope with it and try to make plans and schedule things. But in the end, time makes fools of us all. And I really like... I just ran out of time. Yeah, I mean, the 10s already kind of do that, but if you're playing in increments of days, you're not really losing time, right? Like, you have to move on a little, but not significantly. On the flip side, when you're expecting to not have time, and suddenly the game is like, no, let's sit with this for a while. Let's sit with this. Let's explore this time that you were ready to skip over. You know, it's really easy to get caught up in the fast pace of life, and it's really valuable to have things that break check us every once in a while and make us stop and slow down and just like watch the tide roll in, listen to the crickets in the morning, watch the city slowly light up as the sun rises. You know, small, slow, quiet things. And then if we're wrapped up in telling a story about the passage of time in a small town over the course of even weeks, we might miss out on a little bit, especially if we're talking about millennia. So I really like this, but it would be require a bit more improvisation. I like the tarot deck. Tarot deck I'm not even going to talk about with my players. I'm just going to do this because it's an aesthetic change. We don't need to do this by committee. Variable time span, I'm going to bring this up and see if we get a quorum on that. Playing online, optional. That's what we're doing. If you're playing with this over a distance, you'll need to adapt some of the rules for online play. Please only use one deck of cards. It can be a digital deck. Every player has access to via Roll20 or another service. We're using Roll20, probably. Or one player may draw physical cards for everyone and narrate the results each turn. I don't have a tarot deck, otherwise I might do that just because of the dramatic flair of it, but nah. I do like the notion, especially if I was just facilitating this and the other 5 players were playing, being a fortune teller and like giving them a card and then asking them a question, giving them a card and asking them a question. Yeah, I dig that. But I also kind of want to play the game too. I don't just want to be the weird mystic on the other side of the table, but they both have their appeals. I won't lie to you, they both do. Yeah, that could be a lot of fun. We'll see. We'll see. Especially taking myself out of it could be really cool. Wait, no, I have a total of 5 players, don't I? Got... plus me, yeah, 6. Yeah, I'll have to think about that. I don't have a physical tarot deck, and yeah, we're not playing on Monday. We're probably playing the week after that, so I probably have time to go. I'll think about it. I don't need to accumulate more stuff, though, and it might be better to just play online. But we'll see. I'm waffling on that. Notes may be kept in a shared doc or in the text of the chat client that we're using. Yeah, that's probably it. Consent token should be replaced with a safe word that can be dropped into text chat to immediately pause game. I recommend stop, but you may pick your own. Yep. It's easy to skip breaks when you're playing online. Don't forget to pay attention to the energy level of the group and self, and take time when needed. Telling stories is tiring. It's true. Thanks. This game is dedicated to a group of friends with who they first played The Quiet Year. A map drawing game about managing a small community to which the ground itself owes its roots. The Quiet Year. Yeah. Did I buy The Quiet Year and just... I did. I bought The Quiet Year and just couldn't... I don't know, I got flustered and... I just wasn't feeling it, and I honestly couldn't tell you why. It might have been a symptom of the relationship I was in and the person I was playing with, but yeah, The Quiet Year I was super interested in playing, and it just... yeah, it didn't work out. I forgot about that game. Okay, so yeah, the ground itself. I was gonna say it shares a lot of that DNA. Cat Brewster, Jack DeQuitt, V. Buckingham. Thank you. Also want to thank generous playtesters who helped refine the game over the course of development by providing feedback. Alex Lucas, Lauren Schmidt, V. Buckingham, Lily Pipkin, Ronan Milano, Brooks Naylor, Cal Filkin, Trish Anchor, Philippa Estrella, Alexander Alquist, Jackson Tegu, John Baker, Brenna Abstlund, Laurel Asplund, Ivy Asplund, Ella Asplund, Kevin Masterson, Christian Sorrell, Jay Hughes, David Hartley, Louis Stone, Ben Lebert, Jacques, Anglo-American tries to read French. Brioni C, Sierra C, Julia D, Ollie D, Catherine M, Catherine L, Colin Stearns, Evans, Gamarok, Ethan Skamarok, Andy Lasnik, CM Booth, Neil Anderson, Ruth Hunter, Jennifer Lorgan, Connor Berry, Andrew Yoder, James Horgan, E. Forney. What a great name. What a great name, E. Forney. Zach Gutierrez, Dylan Lario, Emily Durham, Matthew Gleason. Booklet designed by Alex Lucas. Ground itself, Everest Pipkin, 2019, print edition 2020. Only took like 45 minutes. Read the entire book. It's not that bad. I have no expectation for my players to do it or to sit through this, but it's done. I'm going to provide it as a resource. They listen, great. If they don't, I'll write bullet point notes and maybe just do the whole soothsayer facilitator thing to grease the wheels a little bit. But yeah, I may be back later streaming something, I don't know. But if you're watching on YouTube, this is it for today. Until later, I'm gonna say toodaloo, take care, see you then, bye-bye.